July 12th, 1962, a movie set in the Mojave Desert. The sun was high. The camera was rolling, and a 26-year-old stuntman, fresh off the bus from Indiana, had just told John Wayne that movie fights were fake. Wayne didn't say a word. He just smiled. The way he always smiled when something was about to happen. 5 seconds later, that stuntman was on his knees in the dust, holding his ribs and apologizing. This is the story of what happened that afternoon. The story the old stuntmen still tell when they gather at funerals and reunions. The story that traveled through Hollywood for the next 40 years. The story of the day a kid named Bobby Ritter learned that some men, in some places, are not pretending, and the day the Duke taught a lesson that an entire generation of young actors would never forget. Let me take you back. 1962. The American Western was at its peak. Every major studio in Hollywood was making one. CBS had Gunsmoke. NBC had Bonanza. The drive-ins were filled with cowboys and gunfights and horses kicking up dust. And John Wayne, 55 years old, 2 decades into superstardom, the most famous cowboy in the world, was making a film called Hatari. The film was a strange one. It wasn't really a Western. It was an adventure picture set in Africa about a group of men who captured wild animals for zoos. But the studio wanted Western locations for the close-up work. And the second unit had set up in the Mojave Desert, just outside Lancaster, California. That's where it happened. That's where Bobby Ritter walked into the wrong man's life. Bobby was 26 years old, 6 feet tall, 195 pounds of pure, restless muscle. He had grown up in Indianapolis, working summers on his uncle's farm, throwing hay bales and breaking horses. He had been in Hollywood for exactly 14 months. And he was, by every measure, a kid who thought he knew everything. He had wrestled in college. 2-time Big Ten champion at 190 pounds. He had taken karate classes for 3 years before coming to Los Angeles. He had been in 12 professional fights, small-time stuff, county fairs, smoky gyms in San Bernardino, and he had won 11 of them, and now, after 14 months of carrying lights and moving cables on movie sets, he had finally gotten a real job. Stunt work, 2 weeks at the Mojave shoot, $200. The biggest paycheck of his young life. He thought he was going places. He thought he was the toughest guy on that set. He was wrong. Wayne arrived on the set at 6 in the morning. He always did. He was famous for it. While the other actors slept until 10, while the cameramen were still drinking their coffee, John Wayne was already in his trailer, going over his lines, drinking black coffee, smoking the first of what would be 5 packs of cigarettes that day. He was 55 years old that summer, 2 years before the cancer would take his lung. 2 years before he would learn how fragile a body could be. He was at the absolute peak of his physical power. 6'4", 240 pounds. Hands that had been on 100 horses, in 1,000 fights, on every kind of weapon a man could carry. And he was tired. Tired in the way only men who have done this work for 35 years can be tired. The early mornings, the late nights, the flights, the trains, the buses, the trailers, the same scenes, over and over, in different costumes. Riding the same horse through the same canyon, while the camera caught him from a slightly different angle for the 3rd time that morning. He drank his coffee. He looked out the trailer window at the desert. He thought about how he didn't want to be there. He thought about his ranch in Encino, where his children were probably eating breakfast right now. He thought about 100 small, ordinary things. Then he stood up. He put on his hat. He walked outside, and the stunt coordinator came running over. The stunt coordinator was a man named Yakima Canutt. If you don't know that name, you should. Yakima was an old cowboy from the Snake River country of Washington state. He had been a champion bronc rider in the 1920s. He had taught John Wayne how to fall off a horse without breaking his neck. He had choreographed every stunt in every John Wayne picture for the past 30 years. He was, in many ways, the second father Duke never had. Yakima walked over to Wayne that morning with a worried look on his face. "Duke," he said, "we got a problem." "What kind of problem?" "New kid. Bobby Ritter." From Indiana. What about him? He's running his mouth. Wayne paused. He looked at Yakima. What's he saying? Yakima shook his head. He's been telling the boys he can take any man on the set. Says movie fights aren't real. Says the stuntmen don't know what real fighting is. Says you and me are old men playing dress-up. Wayne lit a cigarette. He didn't say anything for a long time. Yakima waited. Finally, Wayne spoke. How old is he? 26? How long he been on the picture? 2 days. Wayne nodded slowly. Yak, he said, let me talk to him. Yakima frowned. Duke, let me handle it. I'll send him home. We don't need a kid like that on the set. No. Duke, I'm telling you. Wayne's voice was quiet, calm, in way he always was right before something happened. Let me talk to him. Yakima looked at him for a long moment. Then he nodded. He walked away. Bobby Ritter was sitting on the back of a truck, drinking a Coke. When John Wayne walked over to him, he stood up fast. He almost dropped the bottle. Mr. Wayne. His voice cracked a little. He hated that. He cleared his throat. Mr. Wayne, sir, it's an honor. Wayne studied him. He took a long drag of his cigarette. You, Bobby? Yes, sir. Yak says you've been talking. About the stunt work. About the fights. The kid shifted his weight. He glanced around. None of the other crew members were close enough to hear. They were all watching, though, from a distance. Pretending to do other things. Mr. Wayne, sir, I just what? The kid swallowed. He had been waiting for this moment, in a way. He had been imagining it every night since he had gotten the job. The moment when John Wayne, the great John Wayne, would notice him. The moment when he would say something that would make the legend remember his name. He had practiced what he would say. He took a breath. Sir, he said, with all respect, the fights in the movies, they're not real. The stuntmen, they pull the punches. They sell the falls. It's all choreography. And I think maybe people deserve to see what a real fight looks like. That's all I was saying. Wayne studied him. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he flicked his cigarette into the dirt. He stepped on it. Son, he said, what did you do before you came to Hollywood? I wrestled, college, 2-time Big Ten champion. What weight class? He won 90. You ever fight a man bigger than you? The kid hesitated. In wrestling? No, we had weight classes. In real life? I'm once, in a bar. In Bloomington. Guy was about 220. I knocked him out. Wayne nodded. How long ago was that? Couple years. Wayne lit another cigarette. He looked off across the desert. The sun was getting higher. The crew members in the distance were still pretending to do their jobs. 2 of the older stuntmen, Cliff Lyons and Chuck Robertson, who had been with Wayne for 20 years, were standing by the equipment truck, watching. Wayne turned back to the kid. You really think movie fights are fake? The kid hesitated. He could feel something happening. He could feel the air changing, the way it changes right before a thunderstorm rolls into the Indiana cornfields. He could feel the older stuntmen watching. He could feel the silence on the set, but he couldn't back down now. He had come too far. He had said too much. He squared his shoulders. Yes, sir. With respect. I think they're fake. I think most of you guys couldn't take a real punch. Wayne nodded slowly. He took a long drag of his cigarette. Then he did something the kid did not expect. He smiled. It was a small smile. Almost gentle. The way a grandfather smiles at a child who has just said something very stupid and very innocent at the same time. All right, Wayne said. All right, son. I tell you what. He gestured to the open patch of dirt between the equipment trucks. Why don't you and I have a little demonstration? Just for educational purposes. So you can see what's fake and what's real. The kid blinked. You mean you and me? That's what I mean. Sir, I can't fight you. You're John Wayne. I'm a 55-year-old man, son. You're a 2-time Big Ten champion. You said yourself you can take any man on this set. So let's see. No hard punches. No closed fists. We'll keep it light. Just a little demonstration. The kid stared at him. His mouth was dry. Suddenly he wasn't sure about anything anymore, but the older stuntmen were watching. Cliff and Chuck and Yakima, who had walked back over. And 3 or 4 other crew members who had drifted closer, sensing something. He could feel them watching. He could feel his pride backing him into a corner. He nodded. "Okay," he said. His voice was a little smaller than he wanted it to be. "Okay, sir." "A demonstration." Wayne smiled again. "Good," he said. "Good. Come over here." They walked together to the open patch of dirt. The crew members began to gather, quietly, the way men gather when they know something is about to happen but don't want to make a sound that might stop it. Wayne took off his jacket. He folded it. He laid it on the hood of the equipment truck. He took off his hat. He set it on top of the jacket. He turned around. He was standing in the middle of the dirt now. 6'4", 240 pounds. His sleeves rolled up. His suspenders dark against his white shirt. His blue eyes calm in the bright desert sun. The kid stood across from him, 6 feet. 195, younger, faster, stronger by every measurable standard. A 2-time Big Ten wrestling champion. 12 professional fights. 11 wins. He should have been favored. By every measurement that existed in the world, he should have been favored. He was not. "Now, son," Wayne said, "I want you to come at me. Real attack. Whatever you want. Whatever your best move is. I won't punch you. I'll just defend. Show me what a real fight looks like." The kid hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Come at me." The kid took a breath. He thought about what he had been taught. He thought about his college coach, Coach Henderson, who had once told him, "Don't think when you fight. Move. Think later." He moved. He shot in low, the way he had been taught. Single leg takedown, the move he had used to win 2 Big Ten championships. He aimed for Wayne's left leg. He had executed this move thousands of times. It was his best move, his safest move, the move he could do in his sleep. Wayne saw it coming. The crew members who watched said later that Wayne had seen it coming the moment Bobby Ritter shifted his weight. Maybe even before. Maybe Wayne had been watching the kid's eyes the whole time, the way old fighters watch eyes, looking for the half-second before a man commits. Whatever it was. Wayne moved. He stepped to the right. 6 inches. The smallest movement possible. And as Bobby Ritter's hands closed on empty air, as his head dropped lower than his hips, as his entire body weight committed forward, Wayne brought his right knee up. Not hard, not even fast, but timed exactly right. It caught the kid in the soft spot just below the ribs. The floating ribs. The place that, when struck just right, sends every nerve in the abdomen into spasm. The kid felt it. He didn't see it. He just felt, suddenly, inexplicably, that he could not breathe. His diaphragm seized. His knees buckled. His arms, which had been reaching forward, pulled in toward his stomach. He stumbled forward, then sideways, then down. He fell to his knees in the dirt. His head was spinning. His lungs would not work. He looked up. Wayne was standing exactly where he had been 3 seconds earlier. He had not moved. He had not stepped back. He had not even taken his cigarette out of his mouth. He looked down at the kid. His face was sad. "Son," he said quietly, "you all right?" The kid tried to speak. He couldn't. The breath wasn't there. He just nodded. Or tried to nod. His head moved a little. Wayne crouched down beside him. "Take it slow," he said. "Just breathe. In and out. The diaphragm goes into spasm when it gets hit like that." "It'll pass in a minute." The kid sat back on his heels. He put his hands on his knees. He tried to breathe. Slowly, slowly, the air came back. After about 30 seconds, he could speak. "Mr. Wayne," he said. His voice was hoarse. What was that?" Wayne smiled. "That, son, is what we call a knee to the body. It's an old wrestling move. From the carnival circuit. The old prize fighters used to do it in the bare-knuckle days, back before they had rules. I learned it from a man named Earl Pennington in 1937 on a movie called Born to the West. You ever heard of it?" The kid shook his head. Probably not. It wasn't a good picture. But Earl was a good teacher. The kid was breathing easier now. He looked up at Wayne. "Sir," he said. "I'm sorry," Wayne nodded. "I know you are. I shouldn't have said what I said." "No, you shouldn't have. I thought I was tough. I thought I knew things." Wayne stood up. He extended his hand. The kid took it. Wayne pulled him to his feet. They stood there in the desert. 2 men of different generations. The dust still rising around their boots. Wayne kept his hand on Bobby Ritter's shoulder. "Son," he said, "let me tell you something. I'm 55 years old. I've been in this business since 1926. I've done more stunts than you could count. I've fallen off more horses than you've ever seen. I've broken 3 ribs, my left collarbone twice, 2 fingers on my right hand, and my nose so many times I've lost count. Every man on this set, every man you see standing here, has paid that kind of price. The fights in the movies aren't fake. They're carefully done. They're choreographed so we don't kill each other. But the men who do them, Yak over there, Cliff, Chuck, all of them, they could put you on the floor faster than I just did." The kid nodded. His face was red. From the heat, from the embarrassment, from something else. "Yes, sir. You came to Hollywood thinking you were tough. And maybe you are. Maybe in Indiana, on a wrestling mat, in a bar in Bloomington you are. But son, this town is full of men who have forgotten more about real violence than you've ever learned. And every one of them got that knowledge by paying for it. With their bones. With their teeth. With years of their lives." Wayne paused. He looked the kid in the eye. "You want to make it in this business? Don't ever, and I mean ever, talk like that again. Not to me, not to Yak, not to anybody. You watch. You listen. You learn. You earn the right to talk by doing the work. You understand?" "Yes, sir." "Say it again." "I understand, Mr. Wayne." "Sir, I understand." Wayne nodded. He patted the kid's shoulder. "Good. Now go get yourself a drink of water. Tell Yak I said you should learn the falls today. Real ones. The way the old men do them." The kid nodded. He turned. He walked slowly toward the equipment truck. The crew members parted to let him through. Nobody said a word. He got his water. He drank it. He walked over to Yakima Canutt. "Sir," he said, "Mr. Wayne said I should learn the falls." Yakima studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "All right, kid. Come with me." Bobby Ritter spent the next 3 weeks on that set. He never said another word about movie fights being fake. He did every fall Yakima Canutt taught him. He did them clean. He did them early. He did them late. He did them when the sun was so high the metal of the equipment trucks burned to the touch. He did them when the wind kicked up the dust so bad the crew had to wrap bandanas around their faces. He never complained. Not once. Yakima later said, in a memoir written 30 years afterward, that Bobby Ritter had been one of the best students he had ever trained. He said the kid had a humility that was rare. He said the kid would do whatever you asked him, twice if you wanted, and never argue. He said the kid had clearly learned something on his second day. He didn't say what. He didn't have to. Bobby Ritter went on to have a long, quiet career in Hollywood. He never became famous. He never starred in his own picture. He never had his own publicity agent. But for the next 38 years, until he retired in 2000, he worked steadily as a stuntman. He did the falls in westerns and war pictures and crime dramas. He doubled for actors whose names you still see on television reruns. He was in over 200 films. He was known, among the stunt community, as one of the most professional men in the business. He never bragged. He never raised his voice. He never told another stuntman that movie fights were fake. And when he was an old man, when he was 62 years old, sitting in a quiet bar in Burbank, talking to a young writer who was doing a book about the old stunt community, he told the story for the first time. He said, "The most important thing John Wayne ever taught me, he taught me on my second day." The writer asked him what it was. Bobby Ritter took a sip of his beer. He looked at the ceiling. He smiled. He said, "He taught me that the loudest man in the room is usually the man who has the least to say. And the quiet ones, the ones who don't brag, those are the ones you watch out for." He paused. "And he taught me that I didn't know anything. Not anything at all. That was the gift, really. He showed me what I didn't know. He didn't humiliate me. He didn't fire me. He didn't even hit me hard. He just put me on the ground for 10 seconds, and then he picked me up. And he said, 'Now you know. Now you can start learning.'" The writer nodded. "Did you ever see him again?" Bobby thought about it, a few times. On other sets. He always remembered me. He'd walk over, shake my hand, ask how I was doing. He never mentioned what happened. Never, not once. That was the kind of man he was. The writer asked another question. "What do you want people to know about him?" About John Wayne, the real man, not the movies. Bobby Ritter sat there for a long time. He drank his beer, then he said the thing the writer would put on the back cover of the book. He said, "He was the most patient man I ever met." He didn't have to be tough. He didn't have to prove anything. He could afford to be kind, because he had nothing left to prove. The truly dangerous men, the ones who could put you on the ground in 5 seconds, those are the ones who don't need to talk about it. He taught me that. And I tried, every day for the rest of my life, to be that kind of man. I don't know if I made it, but I tried. He raised his beer. To the Duke, he said. The writer raised his. To the Duke. Bobby Ritter died in 2014 at the age of 78. His obituary in the Burbank Leader mentioned that he had been a stuntman for nearly 4 decades. It mentioned a few of the films he had worked on. It did not mention the day in 1962 in the Mojave Desert, when he had told John Wayne that movie fights were fake. But the old stuntmen of Hollywood, the ones who were still alive, the ones who remembered, they told the story at his funeral. They stood by his grave, in their old boots and their old hats, and they told the story. They said he was a good man. They said he learned. They said he became one of us, because he was willing to be taught. The crew of Hatari never wrote down what happened that afternoon. Yakima Canutt mentioned it briefly in his memoir, in a single paragraph. He said John Wayne had once put a young stuntman on the ground in 5 seconds. He didn't name the kid. He didn't describe the move. He just said it was a lesson the boy needed. And after that day, the boy was different. John Wayne never spoke about it, not in any interview, not in any biography, not in any letter that has ever been found, but the story lives. It lives in the bars where old stuntmen drink, in the funerals where old men gather, in the quiet conversations between fathers and sons who work in the same business. It lives in the simple, hard-earned wisdom that Bobby Ritter carried. With him for the rest of his life, the loudest man in the room is usually the man with the least to say. The quiet ones are the ones you watch out for. In John Wayne, 55 years old, 2 packs of cigarettes deep into a hot July afternoon in the Mojave Desert, was the quietest man on the whole set. That was the lesson. That was always the lesson. They don't make men like the Duke anymore. They don't make stuntmen like Bobby Ritter anymore either. They don't make sets like that anymore. The slow, careful, hand-built world of the old westerns. The world where an old cowboy could teach a young one a lesson with a knee to the body and a hand offered to help him up. That world is gone. But every now and then, in some bar in some small town in California, an old man will lean across to a younger man, and he will say, "Let me tell you a story about John Wayne and a kid named Bobby Ritter, and the day in the summer of 1962, when a stuntman learned that movie fights are not, in fact, in fake." The young man will lean in. The old man will start to talk, and somewhere, wherever good men go when their work on this earth is done, Bobby Ritter and John Wayne are sitting at a quiet bar, drinking quiet beers, telling each other stories about the desert. The Duke is laughing, Bobby Ritter is laughing too, and both of them are exactly where they belong. Some say the story of Bobby Ritter and John Wayne is just legend. A tale grown over the years, passed down through the stunt community, embellished with each retelling. Some say it didn't happen exactly that way. Some say it didn't happen at all. But the men who were there, the old stuntmen of Hollywood, the ones who saw it with their own eyes, they swear it is true. They swear that, on a hot July afternoon in 1962, a young stuntman from Indiana told John Wayne that movie fights were fake. And 5 seconds later, that stuntman was on his knees in the dust, learning the lesson of his life. Believe what you want to believe, but the next time you watch an old movie, the next time you see the great Duke walk into a fight scene, remember this. Some of those scenes were acting and some of them weren't. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a father or a grandfather, or a teacher who once put you in your place when you needed it most, please take a moment to subscribe. We have more stories coming. Stories of the Duke. Stories of the men who worked beside him. Stories of the old Hollywood that built this country. One handshake at a time, one quiet lesson at a time, one good man at a time. They don't make men like the Duke anymore, but as long as we keep telling these stories, We make sure he's never forgotten. Until next time, keep your powder dry. Keep your word good and ride tall in the saddle. The Duke would have wanted it that way.